Hello everyone, Alex here from WarnOffKeys.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can create temporary private text channels which will be created for a specific user and only that user will have access to them, and then that text channel will automatically delete itself after a certain amount of time. So a quick example of this within the WarnOffKeys Discord server is a command that I've created for an upcoming Amazon Web Services course. And I'm wanting users to be able to automatically opt into a specific role and also confirm that they have actually purchased that course. Obviously, you can add in your own implementation for this, but for an actual example, if I go into my tutorial channel and I type !AWS, it will then say you have been tagged in a private text channel. Please follow the instructions posted within that channel. We then see this channel down here, and this is my user ID. When I click on this, it's going to say hello, it's going to tag me, and it's going to ask me to type in my email. It will then automatically check the course purchase records, and then if they have purchased that, then it's going to automatically give them the AWS student role. Now, of course, some of these details here might not be relevant for your use case. I'm not going to show you how to do everything here. The only concept I want to demonstrate within this video is how to create a private text channel that only I have access to, as you can see. If I right click here and I go to edit channel and I go to permissions, no one has access to it aside from me. So I can read messages within here. And then this channel will automatically be deleted within 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and wait for that to happen so you can see that happening within the video. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes, and as you can see, the channel was deleted. And so this is the concept we're going to be creating within this video. And real quick before we start, if you do need help with anything, then feel free to ask in the WarnOffKeys Discord server. We have a bunch of people joining every day. And once you've joined, you can scroll down and ask your questions within the JavaScript channel, and I'm sure someone will be able to help you out. So with that said, let's get started. I'm going to be using the Commando framework, but if you're familiar with another command system, then feel free to use that, as long as you understand the concepts that I'm going to be teaching within this video. So I'm going inside my commands directory, and I'm going to go inside my MISC folder, and I'm going to make a new file. This will be called temp-channel for temporary channel.js. We first have to import Commando, so we can do that with constant Commando with a capital C equals require discord.js-commando. Then at this stage, we have to export a class, so module.exports equals class. We'll call this temp channel command. And this is going to extend or inherit the functionality that Commando gives us for our commands. So extends commando.command. And then within this class, we'll need a constructor function. We'll have a client parameter, and then within this constructor function, we have to call the super function, passing in the client parameter, as well as an object, which is going to contain information about this command, such as the name, which will be temp channel. We then want a group, which will be MISC, because we are inside of the MISC folder, as you can see on the left. We want a member name, which will also be temp channel. We want user permissions, which is what permissions the user who's running the command has to have in order to use this. For simplicity, I'm just going to add an administrator, and then we can have in a description, which will be whatever you want. I'm just going to say, creates a temporary channel. Now at this stage, we need a run method, which is going to be an asynchronous method, which has access to a message parameter. So in this exact case, we don't actually need access to any arguments. If you wanted this to be something where there's a specific name for the channel, you can go ahead and access that through the arguments, or if you wanted a specific duration. However, this is going to be created in a similar concept to the AWS command that I showed you a few moments ago, where it's going to be a command that creates a pre-generated channel for you that has all of the names and functionality that we want. Now at this stage, we're ready to actually store some information to a Mongo database. That way our bot's going to understand when to actually delete this channel, even if our bot restarts before the channel is meant to be deleted. If I were to just write in the logic to wait however many minutes within the code, and then the bot were to restart, that channel would never be deleted. So it is important that we use a database here so we can constantly check the database instead of relying on in-memory usage, which could be erased depending on if the bot restarts. So with that said, we need a schema. So I can scroll down to my schemas folder, and I'm going to make a new file called temp-channels-schema.js. Within here, we have to first import mongoose. So const mongoose equals require mongoose. And then we have to create a schema object. So const temp channels schema equals mongoose.schema with a capital S. And then within here, we have to specify the information about this specific channel. So we'll first create a constant that is going to be a required string because we are going to reuse required strings many times throughout the schema. So const rec string for required string. The type will be string and required will be true. Now at this stage, we want to specify both the guild ID and the user ID. However, the user ID should only be implemented if you want this user to only have one particular channel, because if they go to create a channel, we would then check the database to see if that already exists with this guild and this user. And if so, we would tell them, hey, you already have a channel, and we wouldn't create the channel at that point. So we first need a guild ID, which is going to be a required string. We also need a user ID, which will also be a required string. And then we're going to want expires, which will be a date. And then we need to export this as a model. So module.exports equals mongoose.model. We'll pass in the name of our collection. Mine is going to be temp-channels. You can name yours whatever you want. I'll then add in the name of the object for our schema, which is temp channel schema. And then I can save this. And going back to our temp channel command, we can now import this. So const temp channel schema equals require at schemas /temp-channel-schema. This is actually channels, so make sure you spell it exactly how the file name is. Also keep in mind that I'm using something called module aliases, which means that I can specify the exact name of a folder. And if you don't have access to this, then I do have a video on my channel on how to use this. But if you don't want to use it for whatever reason, you can use relative paths and try and find your schemas folder like that. But I'm going to opt into using module aliases. Now at this stage, my goal is to get access to the guild ID and the user ID for the command sender so I can see if this user already has a channel. So we can first destructure these, so guild and member equals message, and then I can create constants like guild ID, which will be equal to guild.id, and constants as member ID, which will be equal to member.id. Now at this stage, I'm going to fetch a document from the database that is going to match the guild ID and member ID equal to these two values. And if it doesn't exist, which means that they don't have a temporary channel created, then null will be returned. So I can say const results equals await temp channel schema dot find one. Within this object, we will say guild ID and member ID. And then we can use an if statement to see if results actually exists. So if results means that this is an actual object, which means that they do have a channel. We can then complain to the user. So message.reply. You already have a temporary channel. We can then return. Now, obviously, if you're making this functionality for a very specific use case, you might want to have a more meaningful message. Rather than saying temporary channel, you could say something along the lines of an AWS role channel in my use case, or something like that that matches your exact functionality. Now, after this if statement, we are going to assume that they do not have a channel. And so we want to send them a message saying that they've been tagged in a channel and to check that channel. So we can say message.reply. You have been tagged in a channel. Please check it. You can add in whatever text you want here, of course. And now it's time to create the actual private channel. We want to make sure our function is asynchronous because we have await here, but also this is going to be something where we have to await. We're going to say await guild, which we've destructured right up here, .channels, .create. And this is going to be a function that's going to take in two objects. The first one is going to be the name. So I'm going to say test temp channel. And then the second one is going to be an object. Now within here, we can specify a few different things. For example, we have parent, which is going to be the category ID. So if I go into Discord, let's say I want to post it within the community category. I can right click here and click copy ID. I can then paste it right here. I'm going to add in a comma and then a comment, which is going to say community category, just so we have a bit more of an understanding of what's happening there. And then we want to add in permission over rights. This is going to be an array of objects that are going to contain information about what roles and what users have what permissions with this channel. So I'm wanting no one to be able to see this aside from me. And so you have two options here. If this is going to be a bot only for your own server, you could just copy the everyone role ID and you could use that. But I'm assuming most of you are going to want to create this functionality for multiple Discord servers and not just your own. So with that said, we do have to gain access to the everyone role. And so we can do that right up here. we can say const role equals guild.roles.cache.find. This is going to create a callback with one parameter, which is going to be the role. And within here, we're going to return true or false depending on if this is the role we want. If we return false, we're going to continue to basically loop through all the roles to try and find the one we want. And if we return true, we are then going to return that to the actual role variable. We can then return role.name is exactly equal to @everyone. Now in this exact case, role is going to be the @everyone role, which is by default, everyone has it. So now we can go through and we can uncomment this. And we're wanting to specify an array of objects here, and each object is going to specify different permissions that a group or a user has, or permissions that those do not have. So for example, our first object here will have an ID property, which its value is going to be role.id. We can add a comment in here after the comma, of course. We can say everyone role, and then we're going to add in deny, which is going to be an array of strings, and this is going to be view_channel. So you have two properties here when it comes to the actual object. We have deny and we have allow, which are going to be arrays of strings that you want to either give access to or deny access to. In this case, we want to deny access to viewing the channel for everyone, but we want a second object, which is going to have the ID of member ID, which is the command sender, and then also allow, which will be an object, which will be view channel. So let's go ahead and try this out. I can save this and I can start the bot again. I can go back into Discord. I can run !temp channel. And then we see this test temp channel right here. Clicking on this, I'm the only one who has access to it. Obviously the bots do because they're owners. And if I right click and I go to edit channel and I go to permissions, we see that everyone has read messages disabled, but I have read messages enabled right here. So I'm going to manually delete this for now. Make sure that you're deleting the correct channel. Test temp channel is correct. And we can now go through the process of storing this information into the database, and then we'll go through the process of making sure that we delete this after a certain amount of time. So I'm going to say await new temp channel schema with an object.save. This is how we're going to insert information into this. Now within here, we have to specify the guild ID and the user ID, which is going to be member ID. We then want expires, which we're going to calculate as a date right now. Right above this entire statement, I want to say const expires equals new date. And let's say we want this to expire after 1 minute. We could then say expires.set minutes equal to expires.get minutes as a function +1. And so now we can specify expires right here, which is going to then use expires as the name of the key and also the value of the expires variable for the actual value here. Now, if you do want to send a message within this channel, guild.channels.create will actually return the channel. So I can say const new channel equals this. And then I can say new channel.send. Let's just say hello world. Obviously you can tag the user or say whatever you want within that channel. I can then save this, and I'm wanting to go inside of my features folder. And if you have not been following the series, then keep in mind that all of these files here are automatically imported and ran as soon as the bot starts. So if you do not have the same file structure and the same exact features that I've been working on throughout the series, then make sure that you import and run the function that you're about to create within this file. So within the features folder, I'm going to make a new file here. This will be called temp-channels.js. And within here, we are going to export a function, so module.exports. And this function will have one parameter, which is a client. Now at this stage, I'm looking to create a function, so const check for expired. This is going to be an asynchronous function, and we're wanting to immediately run this function whenever this file is imported. And also we're looking to run this function every single 10 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to say set timeout. We're going to pass in the name of the function, which is check for expired, and I'm going to have this run every 10 seconds. So there's 1000 milliseconds within a second. And so I say 1000 times 10. You could say 10,000, but with this method, I can easily edit this to 30 or whatever I want to do. Now within here, we're looking to actually look through our collection to see if there's any documents that have an expired timestamp past the current timestamp. So first we have to create a current timestamp object. So const now equals new date. And then above everything, we have to also import our schema. So const temp channel schema equals require. Again, I'm using module aliases. So @schemas /temp-channels-schema. Now at this stage, we want to use a less than query to see if we can find any documents within our collection that have a timestamp less than now. I'm going to set our entire query object within its own object here, that instead of actually passing it inside of its own parameter, because we're going to be using this multiple times. So const condition equals an object. We're going to say expires, and this has to be expires exactly typed like this because this is the name of the property that we added to our schema right here, which is what we're looking to actually check our values against. So expires is going to have $less than, and then we can pass in our own date, for example, now. And so this condition, when ran against a MongoDB collection, is going to search for documents that have a property called expires, which has a value less than the property of now, which is the current timestamp. Basically, that means that we are going to look for specific objects within our database that should be deleted. So now we want to get the results from actually running this query. So const results equals await temp channel schema.find. We can pass in our condition. And know that I'm just passing in the object here. I'm not adding in my own curly braces or anything like that. We now want to make sure that results actually exist. So if results actually exists, we can then loop through the results, gain access to the specific guild for that exact channel, gain access to the channel, and then delete the channel. And then after all of this, we are going to go ahead and delete everything within our collection that matches the condition right here. So first, let's loop through all of the results for const result of results. And then within here, we have access to the result, which is going to be an object similar to this. So we can destructure the guild ID. So const guild ID equals result. And I'm now just realizing that I've made a mistake so far. We actually want to store the channel ID as well. So I can say channel ID is a required string. I can go ahead and save this. And then going back into our command, we also want to save that here. So we have access to new channel already because I demonstrated how to actually send something there. So we can say channel ID is going to be new channel.id. Now in this case, we now have access to the guild ID and the channel ID, which means that once our channel is supposed to expire or be deleted, we can now gain access to the guild and then gain access to the actual channel from the channel ID and then delete that channel. So I can save this. Going back into our features file, we also want to destructure channel ID. So now we have access to both. We then want to gain access to the guild based off of the guild ID using the client parameter. So I can say const guild equals client.guilds.cache.get. I can pass in guild ID. And then we want to use an if statement to make sure that this guild actually exists. So if for whatever reason your bot was kicked out of the guild, then this is going to be a null object. And so we want to use an if statement to prevent any errors. We can then get access to the channel. So const channel equals guild.channels.cache.get. We can pass in the channel ID. And a similar concept here, we want to make sure that channel actually exists. So if channel, we now know that we have a correct guild and a correct channel. We can then delete the channel. We can just simply say channel.delete. And then after this entire for loop, and I'll click on this opening curly brace right here, so it highlights the ending one, so I know where I'm clicking. We can then run a query to delete every single document that matches the specific condition that we already fetched. We can simply do that with await temp channel schema.delete many. We'll pass in the condition. So this should be everything we need. We can go ahead and save this file, and I'm going to run the code. So now I can go into my tutorial channel and I can run !temp channel. It would then say you have been tagged in a channel, please check it. Going back over here, we see hello world. So I wasn't technically tagged in a channel, but that's fine. That's just what the message we sent for the command. And now if I go into Mongo, I can click on refresh at the top right, and scrolling down, I can then see temp channels. Clicking on this and scrolling up, we see our guild ID, our channel ID, our user ID, and when this actually expires, which is in 1 minute from when I ran the command. So going back into Discord, we should see this channel automatically delete itself soon. All right, so it just automatically deleted itself. And so if we go back into Mongo and I click on find, we now see no documents. That was automatically deleted as well. And so this is how you're going to create a temporary channel command using Discord.js. Thanks for watching this Discord.js tutorial. If you want to learn more about Discord.js, consider clicking on the playlist you see on your screen now. If you need help, feel free to leave a comment or ask in the Worn Off Keys Discord, which can be found in the video description.